the fulfillment of its own purpose. Now, just what that purpose is not very clear. Whether this purpose is to prove the existence of deity, or whether it is intended to result in the perfection of creation, is a matter that's still open to considerable debate. For the general point of view is that the will of this power is the perfection of all that lives according to some code of perfection, which at the present time is largely physical. The perfection may call for something better than physical, but the reason for it is the conveniences of physical life, such as, for instance, the end of poverty, the end of crime, and the end of many vices that arise which are against the common good of society. So now we have a problem that goes right back to this concept of deity. Deity is supposed to have been the power that created the human being. Humanity is a projection of deity into manifestation. Why was this projection necessary? This is a question that is constantly under consideration. If we wish to assume that deity is all-powerful and omnipotent in every sense of the word, why did deity not produce its creation perfect to start with? After all, why should deity create an imperfect structure and then demand its perfection through a series of what to the average person consists of misfortunes? Where and how is it that humanity, being a product of the divine mind and the divine will and the divine soul, should not have been developed perfect in the beginning? Why should there be this tremendous struggle against the evils of life? Why should the individual be required to constantly stand against his natural inclinations? If he was intended to be perfect, why were these inclinations embodied into his structure? Why was he made imperfect if the divine power can produce perfection? Why should the individual be in constant conflict with morality and ethics if he is a principle has origin in a divine power that is perfect in morality and ethics? This question has been asked time and time again, and it seems to be one of the great hang-ups in the development of an ethical world principle. Why is man not perfect if he is the product of perfection? And if he is not the product of perfection, why does he hope for perfection if the only power that exists cannot bestow it, or does not bestow it? Now, there has to be an answer to this, and the material scientists take it very simply. There is no such thing as a control demanding perfection. The human being is a growth, an unfoldment of physical forces and factors. And enfolded within it, this being is life, integration, and a power to grow, to become, and to propagate. These things are inherent in forms, but they do not contain within themselves any strict or certain form of ethics. They are growth, producing right and wrong, and right and wrong are finally sorted out by the results of action. The individual who has enough experiences gradually comes to certain conclusions. This theory, however, has been subject to a number of reversals. At the present time, we have more intellectual knowledge than ever before and less ethics. We have developed a tremendous growth of materialism away from ethics, away from morality, and away from principles. Now, if the scientific process is complete, and the final end of all things is the production of a self-sustaining creature, a being that is sufficient to all its needs, then science is in trouble because it isn't producing such a creature. If, on the other hand, only morality and ethics, temptation, and gradual moral growth can produce perfection or produce release from problems, then why and how does this come through in our theological studies and considerations? So we come to a very interesting problem here. Namely, let us now say that we are going to think in terms of a different concept of what humanity is. We've thought of humanity as a biological miracle on the physical level and a psychological miracle on the religious level. But perhaps there's something else to the thing. There's something more that we haven't investigated at all. And that is, what is the basic structure of life in this world, or in any other created sphere of life? What is life in this sense? Now, the ancients had another concept of this, which we have generally overlooked. One of the oldest forms of symbolism for life is a river. It is a stream. And in most philosophies of antiquity, this stream of life is flowing out of a cause. It is like a stream rising in a great mountain and gradually drifting down the side of a hill, gathering small ripplets to itself, until finally, with a tremendous crash, this stream of life falls into the sea. And this is the great cycle of life, that this is life moving inevitably towards infinite differentiation and finally into ultimate reorganization and reintegration. Therefore, instead of thinking of life as simply an energy in the sense of humanity, let us think of humanity as an aspect of life. That life itself is a forever ensouling power. It is continually unfolding itself. And this great stream of life, which we call humanity, is one tremendous entity, an entity which is, according to some of the Hindu philosophies, composed of nearly 60 billion single entities. That what we call humanity is a vast energy, a vast concept and complex of motion, life, integration, and power. That what we call the human being is a member of this great society which we call humanity. Humanity is one structure, one being, one substance. And this humanity rises within the unfolding of universal phenomena. It arises not in materialism, but in the great process of nature and nature's labors, namely, be ye perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Therefore, we are thinking now not of humanity as a series of individuals alone, but humanity as the one being which we call the human being. We find this in the ancient religious systems of both Christianity and the ancient Hebrew systems from which the Old Testament was derived. We find, therefore, that there in the Old Testament that Adam Kadmon, is not a person. Adam Kadmon is humanity collective. There is one mysterious power. This being is one being. And this one being consists of all individual human beings considered together and moving together in the great river of life. And this river of life is being moving to the perfection of itself. This is a little abstract and a little big to think about all at once, but it gives us a very important clue, namely that we are moving together along a pattern that is intended to bring about certain definite results. In other words, we are not paying for past sins, nor are we doomed to make more sins and nothing else. We are here to grow, to unfold the potential which we call human, which is one of the innumerable levels of life in the infinite universe. We are one creature, more or less, cast away like Robinson Crusoe on a desert island, but not cast away outside of the divine purpose, cast away to prove and justify that purpose. We are here to achieve the growth of this being which we call humanity. This being is made up of an infinite number of separate personalities, all growing together. This great being which we call the humanity also breaks up within itself into a number of races, sub-races, and divisions, all of which are part of one structure. This one structure being a level of growth in the universe, a level that has become part of everything, just as much a justified fact as the development of solar systems, or the development of planets, or the development of various continents on planets. These things are growth symbols, and humanity is an entity growing. One entity, made up of an infinite variety of individualities. This was the point that was made by Herbert Spencer, that man is an infinite variety. And when we think of man, we think of mankind not as a person, but as the person, composed of all the individual members of the human life wave. Humanity becomes, therefore, a life wave, a life motion in space, a life principle with which we must all become more and more aware and properly informed. This one principle, therefore, is not here to be punished. It is here to grow. And the symbol of that growth is simply a child. A child is a symbolic unit in this great process. The child is not born to suffer. The child is not born to make mistakes. The child is here to learn through trial and error to develop the potential of itself. In other words, by growing, the individual overcomes the stasis which we call inertia. Everything in the solar system is growing. Races grow. Nations grow. Nations and races break up into subdivisions. They can pass through all forms of temptations and problems, such as a child growing up. And this child is not going to be stronger by having temptation removed, because this would be contrary to the production of a mature race, a race capable of taking its place among the great galaxies which populate space. So we are part of the population of space. We are part of a plan which we don't know the end of, and probably will not for a long time. But we know we are growing for a purpose, that this growth is proper, natural, and if resisted, can be the source of complications. The moment we resist the motion of becoming better, we loose all kinds of sorrows upon ourselves. The child is not punished in nature simply before ignorance. It is presented with means of overcoming ignorance. But if it refuses to accept this information, the child may pass through a series of very trying experiences, not because anyone hates it or anyone wants to destroy it or that God has forgotten it, but because growth is the great reason for existence, whether it is in space, in the family, or in the world. These things are part of a great unfolding order of life. And this unfolding order of life is the thing that is important. Now, when the scientist says we should forget all about history and forget all about the past, he deprives us of a great textbook of experiences and their consequences. There isn't a single problem that we face today, except possibly nuclear physics, and even that is questionable, that has not already been faced. We know very much what happens to nations that drift away. We know what happens when a society loses its ethics. We see the ruins of the past, and in every case these ruins stand for the misuse of power. Generally speaking, every nation has gone down to disaster, like every individual, through selfishness, through lack of self-discipline, and for ambition to power or wealth. They've all gone down from that cause. So we very carefully avoid mentioning that cause, because it would interfere with the prosperity of the hour and might tempt us to improve ourselves. If this temptation became strong enough, we might become a comparatively intelligent race. And that, in turn, would be a great distress to those who want to exploit us. But these things are not God punishing us. They are the laws of life, the simple principles of integrity asserting themselves over the various ambitions and vicissitudes of human nature. Therefore, we live in a reasonable world. We live in a world in which all things are growing. We are living in a world in which cooperation is inevitably necessary, but we are still striving desperately to maintain competition. We are definitely in need of one religion, but we are afraid we might get it. And instead of working towards it, we do everything possible to keep the